What do Jess Fox, Mick Fanning, Stephanie Gilmore, the Sydney Roosters and the New South Wales State of Origin team all have in common? Nam Baldwin. Nam has spent decades helping world champion surfers, Olympic athletes and executives master their internal state under pressure. Today I want to capture the stories, the messy moments, the breakthroughs and the practical resets that separate world-class performers from everybody else. And Nam, before we dive into your work with elite athletes, I want to take a step back and hear a story you shared about your own early experience with pressure. You've spoken about growing up in South Africa, playing cricket as a kid, and a moment that clearly shaped the way you think about performance and composure.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Just such a pleasure to be here. I've admired you for many years, so thank you for bringing me in.
We'll call this the Mutual Admiration Society now. It's great to have you on.
All good. Yeah, very difficult time back then in the sense that, as an 8-year-old, having to perform, because if you didn't perform in certain areas of cricket practice and other factors when you're at school, it was the time and age where teachers were allowed to beat you. And the teachers at the time were rather big. They were South African Afrikaners. My cricket coach was about a 6'5" man. And if we dropped the ball 3 times, we got beaten with a cricket bat 3 times. It's just probably a bit of fun for him, but quite emotionally and physically scarring for us. So one day I dropped the ball 3 times and bend over. That really did affect me. And I know for some viewers that might trigger some, and I'm sorry about that, but it was a really difficult time. But also I find there is 2 sides to this story. One is, yes, I could get stressed out and be affected by that, or I could actually grow from that experience. And that's the fortunate path I took, was growth. When I got home, I was very upset that for the next 5 years I would have to put up with this. And luckily we had a gardener who was particularly good at martial art. He asked me, "What's wrong?" I said, "I just got beaten again and I'm just sick of this and I don't know what I can do." And I was really upset. And he grabbed my hands and they're shaking and he said, "Nam, I'm going to show you something and you'll never drop the ball again." And I'm like, I'm all in. And it just happened to be that he said, if you can control the way you breathe, you will control the way your body behaves. Probably not in those words, but it's very, very similar to that. And I'm like, okay, just tell me, what have I got to do? And then we'd practice breath work to support calming down my nervous system so that things like my finer motor skill was still accessible even when I felt scared. And I could control things like catching a ball, which can be very difficult when you're stressed out. Lo and behold, didn't drop the ball again.
So this is pioneering. Your gardener. This is way before we had breathwork coaches and heart rate variability monitors.
100%. And the fascinating thing is that I just went on an absolute direct line of researching and understanding more about physiology and psychology from there on. And I was at school, I studied stuff and looked at sort of knowledge-based work that was outside the curriculum because I was like, I don't want to learn maths and stuff. I want to learn about how my body behaves when I'm stressed out, because if I can regulate that, life becomes so much better. So it took me on a journey and took me into freediving. When I was 16, I was holding my breath for over 6 minutes and all sorts of crazy stuff. Through my own research and workings and so on, and got into martial arts at an early age and learned the real kind of at a textbook way to understand self and self-regulate.
If you have another budding performance coach track you down and says, "Hey Nam, love what you do with elite athletes, love what you do at the point end of the corporate world, love what you're now doing with acting," and we'll talk about all this today. What's the best way to become a performance coach? Well, you probably popped your head up somewhere, late teens, early 20s, and went, wow, I've been practicing doing reps and sets on state management, performing under pressure, being a decent human being. I reckon I might commercialise this.
Yeah, powerful. And probably the first leap of taking that journey from a professional perspective is meeting my partner, Devon. She's studied psychology and human movement and so on. And when we came together, I was approached by a big wave surfer called Shane Haran. He was a world champ. He's, probably in his 60s now, but he said to me, I surf 60 to 80 foot waves. I heard you can hold your breath for over, because at the time it was about 7.5 minutes. Can you teach me? And I'm like, no, that's a whole different game. And he said, but why not? And I said, well, when you're in huge waves, you're getting stressed out and your heart rate's wrong and blah, blah. And then my partner Devin said, no, we can put something together here. So we came up with a concept and a program called breath enhancement training 20 years ago. And then one of our first clients after Shane was Pat Rafter, the tennis player. And
he did. Pat did all right, didn't he?
He did all right. Yeah, he did all right.
World number one ranking, golden boy of global tennis.
Yeah, lovely human, tremendous guy. So
from Shane to Pat 20 years ago, because I see it now, you see it now, there's so many, a proliferation of breathwork courses, and you see them all walking around with their special aqua shoes and doing all the breathing and overdoing it, I think. The value that Joseph instilled in you around kindness, there's also the parallel value with that. There's a humbleness to what you do. Because your list in researching you, it's a rock star list, sport, media, entertainment, but you're very grounded.
Yeah, and thanks to parents, thanks to my partner. So through our relationships, we become who we are. Through our relationships, we become, because those relationships, if they're honest and true, will give us a mirror of who we are and maybe who we need to work towards being. And both my mum and my partner is, kindness is such a quality, so is courage. They're virtues that you can't get away from if you want to really do well in this tough life that we live in. So yeah, just an honor to have people around me that supported me in taking leaps of faith.
Not everyone has that, Nam. Not everyone has that international experience at a young age, a loving family, an amazing gardener who becomes your spiritual teacher, a brother, the opportunity to dive, and the list goes on. What do you say to someone who says, look, that sounds a great background, mate. My background was shit.
Yeah.
How can you teach me, help me, coach me to put some of these principles into practice despite having a pretty tough background?
Yeah. And let's just get one thing clear for all the people listening in. My background was hard. You get beaten by a 6'5" man, you get scared, and it's not a pretty place, and it does really affect you. Then you go to a boarding school where you're getting 15-year-olds wanting to beat you up every night, and there's no one to help you. Fear drives you. So it wasn't easy. There was some great moments and great people, but man, was it tough in times. So my advice is to that, what you just asked, how could you help someone who's had a tough background? You have great conversations and make meaning. Make meaning of the difficulties. What does this mean? Where to from here? And what I mean by that is when we start to unpack challenges and traumas and so on that we may have gone through, there's nothing you can do about them now. They're done. But the meaning you make from them is the critical piece. And sometimes that needs some time for you to have an emotional experience of what happened and what you went through so that your emotions have their say. If you suppress, deny, avoid, and keep pushing through, they will come back, and make sure that sometime you will break down, let them come out, and then you'll move forward. But if you can have a good coach or someone that you're working with that can help you unpack, tell me, what does that mean to you? Get you to have better perspective and acceptance. What you'll find then is you can set your intention of where you want to go from here. And that really then becomes, the bad stuff becomes potentially growth. Because growth usually only comes when you're super challenged and supported. And that's the nature of life, how everything flourishes. A tree will not grow if you stick it in a house and the wind is not blowing against it regularly. A butterfly will not live if you open up the cocoon it's in and not let it struggle to come out. So life requires struggle and support, and that's how we change and grow.
It is such a true story. Our biggest challenges is where we grow. The worst thing you can do for kids, the worst thing you can do for family members, the worst thing you can do for team members is make it easy. That's sometimes a challenge, Nam, and people listening and watching this will feel that. Like when you really love someone and want to contribute and support someone, you want to give them everything. But we know, especially with the kids, if you give them everything, they become precocious little bastards. It's that blend between struggle, isn't it? If you ask someone, what are you most proud of? So as we pulled on your story a little bit more, it wasn't just glitz and glam. You're proud of getting over, and horrible to hear that. That's some of those tactics that we used back then around discipline, but it's made you stronger. A parallel story when I was growing up, very similar era, we had Catholic nuns. Now, there's some really interesting research that's come out about Catholic nuns recently, because to get a study for this, almost ridiculous to get ethics approval, but the nuns in Italy many, many years ago, when they joined the convent, signed a disclosure that when they passed away, they could look at a brain scan, and then they worked out whether these nuns were optimistic or pessimistic via attribution style. And what it shows is the more optimistic nuns lived 7 to 10 years longer than the pessimistic nuns, and they didn't have anywhere near as much Alzheimer's or the degenerative diseases. So it's a fascinating study, right? Going to a convent, giving ethics approval to sign over, research my brain, and the nuns that showed much more high marks, so attribution style, permanence, pervasiveness, and personalness. So when I read that story, I had a bit of a giggle, because the nuns that I had, especially at St. John's Catholic school in Glen Innes, they weren't the optimistic nuns. Sister Thelma and you too. I still remember this. I set margins in some of the work I do now, and I use that as a metaphor when I'm coaching execs, set a 5 centimetre margin. It was from Sister Thelma, mate, because if we didn't have a 5 centimetre margin ruled with a red pen and measured, with a ruler, we'd actually get our fingers caned. And I told that story to my 2 elder kids recently. So Mickey, 17, Archie, 14. And Archie went, oh, that's cruel. Like, you can't do that to kids. It's like how the times have changed.
Oh, totally. Yeah, so much so. And I think we've got to also acknowledge, for everyone that does go through difficulty like we did and may go through it now, one of the greatest strengths of being human is adaptability. We are very adaptable. So although things can get very, very hard and tough, our genetic makeup is to adapt. What would be great, and what you probably found too, is making meaning of it, where you actually start to think about the positive aspects of, well, what does that mean positive-wise? Well, there's no positive in it. Well, no, it may mean that it gives you perspective. That was really hard. Let me focus now on what's been really good, and then we get this nice transition of what is painful, what is not painful, what is good, what is not bad, so that then we can start to have greater scope, greater bandwidth of our capacities and how we handle things, our resiliency, and then we can work on tools to improve those.
Great segue, Nam, to what I wanted to talk about next. One of those tools, I'm going to go to a LinkedIn post from you titled "The Skill I See High Performers Miss." I'm often asked, what's a common trait that high performance executives have in common? One of my answers is, well, when they first inquire, they often mention how tired they are, but they need help to be operating at 110%. You know who you are. Sorry, people, newsflash, it is not sustainable. Obsession has limitations. Therefore, one of the key skill sets we work on is the ability to reset on demand. Love that as a theme. Love that. Can we talk about what that means? 1. 2, can you give me an example for 1 or 2 athletes? And there's a guy over watching on the video, your right shoulder, that we might be able to get an example from, Mick Fanning. I think he's got 1 or 2 examples that would be absolutely on point for that. So first of all, talk to me about this ability to reset on demand.
Yeah, which, again, let's go to the very basics of the body. The body, let's say that is an elephant. And then the human part that allows us to function and use tools to improve how we operate and so on is the rider. So we've got the jockey and the elephant. Here's the thing. When the body gets really challenged, you've got to be an amazing rider to really regulate yourself. So what does that mean from a viewer's listening in perspective? Well, you've got to keep things very, very simple to be able to reset on demand. So the first thing that changes when we are not in a good place would be our emotional self. And emotions can respond due to a situation in 1/12,000th of a second. Very quickly, we can have an emotional experience that then clouds judgment and so on. And That then changes heartbeat and the way the heart beats, and then that changes how we breathe. And that's probably where I will get to first off is, okay, let's just focus on some breathing where it's calming the way the heart beats, allows the vagus nerve, which is the biggest nerve that we carry in our body, to signal up to the brain that at least the body is gaining control back. Now, you can control your breathing in pretty much any situation to a degree. So if I teach anything first off, it would be, let's use the breath to guide the heart to beat better, to send signals through the vagus nerve up to the thalamus, part of the brain that dictates what we do with the situation. Now, as an example, breathe in for 5 seconds, breathe out for 5 seconds through your nose, and do it very gently, quietly.
Let's do it in real time. So wherever people are digesting this podcast, let's go. So we'll breathe in through the nose for 5 seconds.
And before we do that, we just want to make sure your posture's good. So imagine you're being pulled up by a piece of cotton from your head, and then open up that
from your hair, Nam.
From your head. No, from your head. Not you. Sorry, Andrew. I've said head, not hair. From your head. Yeah, gotcha.
So pull up posture.
Yeah, so posture's nice, soft belly. So you let your 6-pack, 8-pack, 2-pack, or 12-pack, Andrew, like you've got. Just let that go.
Keep going, Nam. Keep going here.
And then when you breathe in, be aware of the coolness of the air coming in through your nose. So, and that might be you're breathing in for a gentle tap on your leg with your finger for 5 taps. When you breathe out, use your nose, breathe out for 5 taps, but really soften your jaw, your lips, chest and shoulders. If you wanted to add to a bit more calmness to that out breath, you would really soften your gaze of how you're looking. So we're using physical things to help the mental self and emotional self down-regulate. Now, 50 seconds of that, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, 5 times, I know through science will really shift your nervous system into what we would call neutral, which means you're not happy, not sad, you're just kind of here, present. And from there, you can choose where to go a lot easier than if you were out of sorts. So reset on demand might be using the breath as an example to just shift the nervous system that is the biggest indicator of your state, either your fight, flight, or you're calm, or you're going back and forth between. But if you want to kind of end up in the middle, the breath is the greatest guide and the most supportive thing that you can probably do. Now, 50 seconds is easy, time-wise, to be able to slot that into moments. The other thing I'd suggest with that too, when you reset on demand, is take stock of where your system's at. Do you need to reset more often so that you can then know that you've practiced resetting regularly to reset on demand? Because it's a skill. You've got to learn to do it. So if you want to calm down in the middle of the night when you're freaking out because of this not being done and if you haven't practiced regularly through the day, it's going to be hard to do it at night. So through the day, you would have deliberate times where you would deliberately do this a couple of times. Now, if you back that up day in, day out, you become a master of your own nervous system, where now the jockey, you, and the elephant, your body, are really talking to each other more effectively, so that when you need to reset on demand, it knows, it remembers and goes, yeah, okay, if the breath is calm, the system's calm. And there's a simple tool.
And you can feel that. And I'll ask all of our audience to just go back. How did you feel when you do that breathing? You've got a calming effect, Nam. I find you've got a real blend of energy and upbeatness, but you're not like the, rah, hey, there's 5 steps, step number 1. You see some of the speakers doing that, and like, oh, God, I need to lie down and have a shower. There's a real calmness. So you obviously practice what you do, and there's some real parallels. As we said before we went on air, we are brothers from another mother. I call it recharging on the run. So how do you tap the parasympathetic nervous system and pulse between sympathetic nervous system and high-end brainwaves and parasympathetic and psychological detachment? So many parallels. But I love how you're also reinforcing that. You got to train that before you need it. That's what so many people do. Nam, what do I do? I'm stressed. You got to practice this stuff. You really do need to do those reps, do those sets.
Yeah, and make it easy to win. Don't think you got to do 20 minutes of meditation every day. Although that would be wonderful. It's moments. It's 50 seconds here. It's a minute there. Where whenever you get stressed, from now on, every time you feel your level of stress increase, recognize, self-awareness is the ultimate aspect of any success, is are you aware? As soon as you recognize a bit of a, whoop, here we go, practice calming down. So you could use that when you go to the gym and you train, you do a set, now really calm down. Teach your nervous system that you are in control, not it. And when you get anxious, give it space. Try not to jump on it and go, oh, here we go, I'm starting to freak out, let me get my breathing. Try and do the work outside of the stresses that you have as well. So yes, when you get stressed out, try and calm down, but then calm down regularly in spite of any stress. Because calmness is a prerequisite, I believe, of high performance, probably more than any other state of mind or body. If you can't be calm, you can't handle pressure well. And one of the ways I figured that out is when I freedove over 60 meters on one breath, swimming down, is if I thought at any point down at 60 meters, I'm running out of air here and I'm going to not be able to get up, I would probably panic and I'd drown very quickly. So I had to deliberately do the work leading into that type of experience of accepting that my body is incredibly capable, as is everyone on the planet. The enormity of what we are is beyond measure, but we don't drop into that potential very well because we don't open up the door of things like deliberate practice and challenging ourselves. We love comfort. We're living in a comfort crisis. I say, seek out difficulty regularly to a level that you're able to manage yourself, stress, but calm and come out of it like an ice bath for 10 seconds or a cold shower, anything that stresses you, and then calm yourself down. It is the greatest skill. It is the potential, the leverage point of your potential is emotional and physiological regulation.
But we don't have the range. We don't stress ourselves enough and really get out of our comfort zone. It's stress because it's that incessant stress of back-to-back meetings and schedules and technology. And then we don't relax. So we're in this static linearity. So talking to you, it's that beautiful pulse, like stress yourself. Can I just say to our audience, so I don't think a lot of people are going to get down to 60 meters. That's ridiculous, mate. But what's the world record? What is the world free diving record?
Oh, no, world record's like, I think it's over 100 meters now, and it wasn't I was just loving going deep, and it's just the experience. And this is the other thing, a great question for the audience is, what do you want to experience more of in your life? And if you go, I've got no idea, go, okay, we'll go the other side. What do you hate experiencing at the moment, and flip it, and that's probably what you want more of. So for me, it was more freedom and capacity to challenge myself. And what came with those challenges was an amazing sense of awe and wonder. When you go down that deep, it gets dark. And when you have sharks coming past you and things that are completely predatory and so on, but they kind of connect to you because you're now part of their world and you're very deep, you open up a whole different brainwave pattern that some of us who are listening, and probably many actually, is called flow, but it's one step further than flow. It's a gamma brainwave pattern that is, I reckon, deeper than flow, where now it is the deepest form of connection with all that is within your awareness, that you feel one with things. And that's pretty, esoteric and everything, but from a brainwave perspective, you're hitting delta, but you're fully conscious.
But flow, the term that was coined by Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, the Hungarian psychologist, is the beautiful intersection of you being stretched and you've got the resources to meet it. So you're being stretched, you're going 60 meters and you've got the resources to meet it. I understand how to control my nervous system, my mindset, my physiology. I draw another experience. There's other people that have done 100 meters. Geez, 60 is easy. Talk to me though, then you go that next level. What does that feel like? What happens on that next level?
Yeah, so flow, and it's great that you've opened that door, because flow, and this is one of the most important things that I've surmised and discovered through working with over 30 different world champions in different fields and all that kind of stuff, and executives that really do incredibly well with what they do. Struggle comes first. So if we want to go into flow, we've got to go into struggle, because struggle helps release the chemistry and change the nervous system into a state of being open and present. So what that means is you're going to catch a ball and suddenly you can see the writing on the ball as it comes towards you, because you start to slow everything down, both internally and externally. And now we're leading into self-mastery, which is literally having high effectiveness, both internally and externally in your world, which is phenomenal, but flow requires struggle first. And what it feels like is time goes very quickly. You have potentially a sense of joy, deep connection in what you're doing. And there's just this sense that not much matters now. You let go of judgment, expectation. You let it go and you just be involved with the task that is in front of you. So you're not really in thinking about you and how you're feeling. You're not really doing that. You're more on the task and gently going back and forth of what we call dual awareness. How am I doing? Back on the task. Very momentarily, but there's no real frontal lobe activity. We're just applying our skill to what we are involved in. So the guy behind me, Mick Fanning, was so good at going into those states through some simple processes. Number one, I'll give you the tools. He's retired, he won't mind. Number one, you've got to warm up to what you're about to do if you want to go into a good state of flow. So if it's work, it actually might mean in the morning you get outside, you get into daylight, get your cortisol up, get your serotonin level up, get your breathing rate up, do some activity, have some great water and so on. So you go through a bit of a routine that stimulates neurotransmitters, physiology in your body into a place like, oh, okay, we're on. We feel alive and sharp and focused and dopamine and noradrenaline flowing. Then when you go in to do your activity, if it's work indoors on a computer, maybe answer a couple of emails first and kind of get into flow with that kind of role of doing things. And some people say, no, do the hardest stuff first. I go, well, yes, but maybe go in a bit of flow. It might be tricky to do the emails, but then as you get into it, then narrow into, all right, now let's get completely in the task, but let's follow process, because if we follow process, we let go of outcome that allows us then to come back into the present, because outcome is future, task is present. So we get into the present. So with Mick, though, it was warm up. Struggle, Mick. Let's go through some activity that struggles you, gets the blood flow into the brain. When the blood flows, the brain flows. And the more I got him to struggle with different fun was a factor, fun activity, he just got into that state of flow. So that when he was out in the surf, regardless of situation or circumstance, his whole system is present. And that's where magic happens.
I want to dissect that a little bit, and then I want to go to J-Bay Open in 2015, if you're happy to share that.
Sure.
Dissecting a little bit. My assumption is you're then teaching your athletes enough about the science and the background to understand it, and you would obviously change your aperture depending on the level of curiosity. Like I've got some footballers who've got advanced degrees in mathematics and work as global traders. I have some footballers now that I say, with compassion, that they've got a bit of opportunity to learn and grow in their education. So there's a real range. So do you dial in your aperture? Where is the athlete at? Where is the actor at? Where is the executive at?
Totally. Yeah. And just finding what allows them to enjoy what the work they're doing. So playfulness is a prerequisite, I believe, for real high performance too, right? So if you really enjoy playfulness in training and leading into activities, or playfulness in what you do in certain areas, is a great contributing factor to how you'll follow through. Because if I go back to when the person I'm working with was a child, tell me about the best experience that you can remember. They were probably being playful, or something similar, that allowed them to feel really at their best. So let's try and make sure that whatever we are going to do in terms of performance, there are elements that you really enjoy and you get passionate with your process. And that then shifts how the brain functions. You and I both know that if we want that frontal lobe to come into play gently with motor cortex and a couple of other regions, we need whole brain activation. But that requires a certain state. And being serious and then trying too hard can lock that door. And then you can't kind of feel that flow and get into that place as best as you should.
I really appreciate you being so open. And we also said this before we recorded, the mutual respect. I see you as a collaborator, not as a competitor in the space. Like, we both coach, we both work with executives, we both work with athletes, we both do keynotes. But I really appreciate, mate, you opening up your process, because I can see it's years of experience. It didn't just start with Joseph in South Africa. You've studied, you've learned. It's a body of work that's your whole lifetime experience. Teaching people, it's really a manual. I often say this. I learnt in mathematics, 3-unit maths at school. Volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Give me the radius, Nam. I can fill up a tank anywhere in the world. That's freaking awesome. Hey, I'm your tank filler. Book me. But at school, I didn't learn about emotional regulation or cerebral cortex or different parts of my primitive brain. That was all learned through experience and some hardships in life and some study. So giving athletes, giving executives, giving your high performers these skills empowers them.
Yeah. And you learn, this is the aspect of humility, right? I have learned the most of my knowledge base from others and asking them rather than telling anyone. I've been asking, and that's the beauty of a great coach, is the one that asks the most questions that are relevant to the individual. So a lot of the work that you and I do is quite bespoke, because everyone's unique and everyone's beautifully different and imperfect. But if we can help them access the better version of themselves through challenging them and supporting them, you open up alignment that then allows skill, emotion, and values and belief systems to align in a way that is creating someone who's unstoppable. And I can briefly say about Mick in 2015, he gets knocked off his board by a great white shark.
The horrifying moment. Australian surfer Mick Fanning says he's happy to never compete again after surviving an attack by a shark that appeared out of nowhere in the final of the J-Bay Open in South Africa.
Mate, I'm happy to not even compete ever again. Like, seriously, like to walk away from that, I'm just so stoked. And oh man,
Jeepers, this guy's gone through enormous amounts of adversities and challenges. You know, that year, he had a hell of a year that year, 2015. Beginning, it was tricky. Amicably, him and his wife separated. Mid-year, shark attack. End of the year, one of his oldest brother passed away. So 3 big traumas, capital T. How did he work through it? Well, predominantly giving emotions space, letting himself have those grieving moments, those fear moments, not suppressing them, not avoiding them, but talking about them, being open to people he trusted, so that then those emotions could be expressed and felt, so that part of his brain could then compartmentalize and process that type of trauma. And then I remember saying and sitting down in one of the gyms that I had at home with him, and after his photo when his brother passed away, and I remember saying, so where to from here? And that's a great question when real hard stuff happens. Where to from here? Because you could get stuck in the past and stuck in it's not fair and it's not good and all that stuff. But as soon as you start asking questions that lift you out of those predicaments, like, well, hey, that was shit, but where to from here? A different part of your brain, curiosity, kicks in, and curiosity is one of the greatest mindsets that you can have in those predicaments. And as we went to there, we went, well, bit of time out, and then I got to go back to Jeffries. And I'm like, really? He goes, yep, I want to go back. I go, why? It's unfinished business. And I don't want to get to the end of my life having a regret. And that was his philosophy, really, is no regrets. So we then, and with others, worked on his psychological view of life and philosophy of life. And it can come down to 2 words, no regrets, that then drove behaviors, how he acted, how he trained, how he went then back to Jeffries, knowing that he could get eaten if, there was a lot of great whites in that water. And not only went back and surfed, but went back and won. Like, what? Who does that? Someone who is living their life to the fullest and an all-in attitude. All in. If I get eaten, I get eaten. But I'm going all in because this is what I love to do. So there you got that love again, that real connection to what is purposeful and meaningful to a person's life. When you really connect to that, and you've got these tools through people like us that support, you have a recipe for tremendous fulfillment and success. And that becomes something that you will look back on later and not regret.
I don't know whether to do push-ups and show my excitement now or to go, yeah! Maybe I should do both. You are as passionate about this now as you were when you first started. It shows, it bubbles. Can you jump to an actor you work with, and you've no doubt signed NDAs, as I have over the years with a few actors. Can I ask this in a clever way? What's a movie one of the actors you're not allowed to tell us that you're working with has starred in recently, Nam?
Yeah, well, let me just go back to a good story around a group of actors and actresses that were redoing a movie that has been shown before. So I won't say what that is, but it's coming out very soon. And these group of people, there was...
Tell me it wasn't Sex of the City, the one they did in Dubai. Please tell me you didn't put your name to that.
No.
No, great.
So there's two people in the group. Well, all of them had to be underwater for a scene coming out of a submarine, right? And one of the things that they had to do was break out of the submarine in the movie. And unfortunately, two of the actors could not swim. But they had to be down 7 meters to do this particular scene. So the stunt coordinator that I've worked with for years said, you need to get these people to be able to go underwater without air in their lungs for up to 30 to 40 seconds, 7 meters down. Here's the catch. Two of them, they can't swim. Oh my God, no.
What a brief. What a great brief.
Yeah, what a brief. So here's the thing, right? Anything that is catastrophically challenging, you just break it down into the small parts. So you got a huge goal like that, you got to break it down into simple bits. So how did I get them to do it? I just took them down to the basic level of how to breathe and built a very trustworthy, confident pathway, bit by bit by bit, small chunks, to the level where two of them, I had to go down with them after they've breathed air out of their lungs. They go down into the area where the submarine is. They do the acting down there because they're negatively buoyant. They're standing on the bottom. I then help swim them back up. They take a breath, reset, take another take. But it was all about process again. And one more factor. Now, this is the important one for people to tune in on. So here you got two people can't swim, underwater, 7 meters of water for up to 40 seconds without air in your lungs. That is so scary. But if you break down the process where you lean into those thresholds gently, you'll extend the threshold of capability and fear. And you'll gain experience and familiarity with fears that allows you to open up that threshold. The other factor you need is a deep why. Why am I doing this? And if you can get a big why, you've heard this before, but these actors and actresses, I'm getting paid a lot of money, like a couple of million, not me, the actors and actresses, to do this. There's a big why. And if I do it, what a story I've got to tell for the next role I'm going into of my capability and courage. So get that meaning, find the meaning, get a good coach that can break it down into simple steps, and you can really change the world of someone's potential.
Next time that stunt coordinator rings you, give me a yell. I'm going to help you up your contract and add zeros to it, because if they're paid a couple of million and they don't do the movie, we can equate, what is it per day? I read something recently about Johnny Depp when he was on the Gold Coast and the fiasco that occurred with him and Amber Heard. And every day they weren't filming was hundreds of thousands of dollars. We'll get $1 million easy for you. Like, you know, if they delay filming for a week, there's a bill. Come on, Nam.
So there's the kindness that bites you in the bum. You know, you're too kind.
You can be kind and commercial.
Yeah, that's it.
I also love the approach I've read about, and I saw this in the newspaper. Sounding like an old bloke, aren't I? It was in the newspaper. I heard it on the wireless. It was an article with Jess Fox a couple of years ago. I'll quote the article. It was in the Sydney Morning Herald. To get what she wanted the most, Jessica Fox had to learn how to let go. Or in the words of her performance coach, Nam Baldwin, try easier, not harder. It sounds like a bit of a riddle, and Australia watched on intently as Fox tried her best to solve it in real time at the Tokyo Olympics in pursuit of the gold medal that had for so long eluded her. At first, she failed, although bronze was still a pretty good reward in her K1 final, which is something she often has to remind herself of, despite having fallen short of the world's expectations and her own. Instead, she found a way to empty her mind, focus on her next goal, and headed to a place athletes, artists and others often speak about with wonderment, the zone, that mystical place where body and mind become one and peak performance unfolds naturally. Anyone in any profession can experience it. Athletes maybe more often because we know how to get into that state, Fox said. But you also can't force it. You can't say, okay, now I'm going to do this, and to be in flow, you've got to let it happen. And it doesn't always happen. You've got to be able to perform and deal with it when it doesn't. And when it does click, everything feels easy, in slow motion, and you can control everything. What a beautiful piece.
Yeah, she's a remarkable human and a remarkable athlete. Yeah, the trying easier concept is pretty simplistic, really. When we look at, especially from an athlete's perspective, if you try, there's tension, and tension reduces speed, reduces power, reduces focus, disrupts focus. So when I say try easier, it's about doing activity in a calmer way, a deliberate way. So, and as an example, I'll give you the exact moment. I got Jess to come in and I was just warming her up, and I could see that she was tight and tense, and so I just got a couple of tennis balls out and I started to lob these tennis balls above her head where she had to jump and catch them. But she was just trying so hard that she just couldn't quite get there. And then I said, Jess, you're just overdoing it. And she's like, what do you mean? I go, just try doing it a bit easier. And she's like, I got no idea what you're talking about. What do you mean try easier? And I said, look, if I'm a sprinter and I'm sprinting down the track and I try my hardest, what happens to my face, my upper body? I tense up, and then what happens? I can't use my muscle to drive the speed because tension creates resistance. So when you're jumping, you're tensing. Can you try easier with that? And she got it, and then I threw the ball up and whooshka. She's about a foot higher and catches the ball, and she comes down just a beaming smile. I get it. Okay, that's it. Now let's put that into kayaking. When you're coming down the rapids, it's all about intention and deliberate flow. You've done this thousands of times. Trust in your skill. Be present. Stop thinking of the future. Be here now. And sure enough, result came, and then back-to-back gold medals. And, it's just principles, again, simplistic. But sometimes we've got to, again, I'm going to go back to calmness. We've got to learn to be calm regularly, because trying easier means being calmer. And some of the best athletes are the ones that can really find that sweet spot between intention and calmness.
And for any performer listening to this, a parent, a small business owner, someone who works in government, someone in defence, entrepreneurs who listen to this, when you teach people to be calm, you often come against a barrier. No, I don't want to be calm. I want to be dialed in. There's a real disconnect, isn't it? A lot of people think they've got to be ramped up, jacked up, like really on edge to perform at their peak. It's one of the biggest challenges, I think, a lot of people who haven't learnt this from people like you or I, how to get into that different state. But yeah, it's a real shift, isn't it? To be calm means to be ready.
Yeah, I hear you, and it's something that takes time, and that's where the deliberate practices come into play. And some people do. They like this supercharged high energy, but when we look at that supercharged high energy, we know that that's actually a stress. And if it goes on a little bit too long, it can really stop good function. So ideally, we have a strong intention and intensity, but we're not aggressive. We're intentional and assertive with how we are doing things in particular. And success then goes into the little bits of the detail. So a lot of success is in detail, of allowing then, let's say I'm having a very tough conversation, I'm getting hyped and I want to nail this, I might be better off just really using eye function and locking in on a person's eyes, relaxing my hands as I speak so that the cues coming into my brain are supportive. Because if I start tensing my fist and getting really irate and fired up, the cues are stress. And now I can't access the most important part of performance, how my brain functions, how I think, how I feel. I'm directed by my own negligence around thinking I've got to be super hype, where really, probably not. Probably 88% effort, not 100, is actually spot on.
Try easy. I teach calm as well, and I add eyes off, so the individual zones of optimal functioning, getting a bit nerdy. Depending on the sport, and sometimes in military, if you're working with some people, they've got to bring a bit of aggression in some of the pointy end roles, or in a sport, like if I'm talking to a front rower, being calm for them is different to being calm for a link, say a number 10 or a halfback in rugby league. So just for people listening, there's the calm notion where you are ready to perform. You can access all those wonderful skills Nam's talking about, and then you can dial it up or dial it down for different positions. And that's the uniqueness of working with individuals, isn't it? You can't just go, hey, I've been doing this for 35 years now. Actually, you've been doing it for 40 years, mate, longer. You started this way before the rest of us in the backfields in South Africa. And what I'm really enjoying talking to you, I can see there's a rigour to what you do. You're good at telling stories and communicating, but there's a passion. So you obviously are very clear on your purpose, your values. So there's a congruency between what you teach and living this yourself. That's part of the brochure.
100%. Yeah. And then again, with that calmness that you're just saying, and the congruency is that when you're aligned with truths, you've got freedom, because now you're not thinking about you too much. And if you want to suffer more, focus on yourself. If you want to improve how you're thinking and feeling, put your attention on something that is purposeful, meaningful, and work on the skill sets around that should be difficult most of the time, so that then you're learning most of the time. And then you'll have your moments where you can sing and sit in the glory, and it's wonderful. But that should be a symptom of the work that you're doing, not really a goal.
A lot of leaders, executive teams that we work with and that listen to this podcast, and emerging leaders are really struggling with who they are, and it's that meta-analysis as well. What is it like to be with me? How do I show up to others? Because we can get stuck in our silo of, hey, I'm doing this and I think I'm awesome. But no, what is the experience of me like to others? I know you've thought about that a lot. I can tell the way you dress, the background behind you, the way you carry yourself. This might be a bit of a different question for you. How much work do you do behind the scenes on that, on the storytelling, on the IP, on thinking about the craft and pulling it together, even the way you represent yourself?
Yeah, I am quite obsessive in that respect. I have bad days too, just so everyone knows. Right?
Shock!
Yeah. And there's moments. But what I have learnt to do in those bad moments is go to things to help leverage them, not get suppressed by them. And sometimes they win. Sometimes you just got to roll with it, right? But there's a lot of research, a lot of deeper dives into the basics, the mechanics of certain things. So when I say the basics and the mechanics, I'll give you an example, like breathing. I've done so much research on breathing. I remember traveling with a professor of respiratory science down to Byron 19 years ago, and I didn't know what she did. And she just asked me what I was doing, and I told her all about the breath program I'd put together and and I went in full detail. And I remember at the end of it, I said to her, so I've spoken for way too long. What do you do? And she smiled and she looked at me and she goes, before I say what I do, I don't know how you've done what you just said, other than you must have read so much and dug so deep into this world. And I'm like, yeah, I sure have. I'm a professor of respiratory science and I'm here on the Gold Coast to give lectures.
And you just gone, jeez.
Yeah. But anyway, that was just good feedback that the work I'd done was true, because I am a bit of a science head, but I also learned from experience. And that has been the greatest teacher of all. Some of the things I've read in the book are great, but until you really get out in the field and do them and feel them and go into places of deep, deep discomfort, do you really know? And therefore, really, are you good, or should you be sharing some things if you haven't been there yet? So I've been through enormous challenges with clients and people, not because I wanted to, but because that's where it took us. But wow, that's where the great learnings came from, the hardships, the adversities, making sure that you learn and grow as best as you can from them.
Have you studied formally?
Yeah, I have in certain areas. I have studied formally in certain areas. I didn't go to university. I chose not to. I went to, I've done many diplomas and all sorts of different things that you can do outside of that give me credentials. But I chose not to because I found it too fast in terms of learning. I found that, like a psychology course, as an example, the curriculum, I looked at it and went, wow. So you learn that, then you go to that, then you go to that. How can you retain any of that? You might have some foundational things. And then I have worked and helped so many psychologists understand theories better because of living through what they have been taught at university, where they go, you're like a professor of psychology, because of diving deep into realms more than a university does, because that's my passion.
My question was deliberate. Have you studied formally? I think now a lot of people study formally and get a degree, a Bachelor of Education, a Master's, a psychology degree, engineering, and then they live on that and go, I've got a degree. But there's then studying in life and the degree of life and that curiosity to keep learning and growing. There's some real parallels with you as well on constant learning, curiosity.
Yeah, I think, and especially as we get older and our brain does tend to deteriorate a little bit, I pride myself in proving how my brain thinks, because that's what we do the most, thinking. As an example, just recently I had a terrible neck issue and felt such pain and couldn't move. I couldn't swallow for a bit. It was a horrible experience. I was really stuck. But from then, I drew out, I used ChatGPT actually. It knows me because I use it a bit, but I got basically it to give me a 90-day character building journaling project. And so I'll do things like that. Every so often I'll just go, okay, I need to build on or work on my character. And now I have every morning and night I work on the questions and they're really good questions, amazing questions about how to improve my character when it comes to difficult moments. Because I sort of thought I didn't respond as good as I should to what was going on. I got really frustrated and upset about it and all that kind of stuff, as you do when you're in deep pain. And then the other side of that is also got another side is fulfillment and joy. So I also got at morning and nighttime questions to answer for building greater fulfillment and joy in what I do. So I do things like that regularly, and I do 90 days at a time. So I'm always on a journey of growth. It's just me.
Can we switch from typing into ChatGPT to working with you? People listening to this, if it's as an individual, if it's a team, or it could be a whole organisation, how would you work with people, or what's the sort of work you do? Just give us a bit of an understanding on the scope of work you do, more around corporate.
We have a company called HUPO, which is HUPO, which stands for Human Potential, and helping teams, individuals realise they have a potential. And then we go in and support them through what we call a program in particular called EPIC, which is Emotional and Physiological Intelligence courses. In particular, the realm of well-being and performance merging together. You can't separate them, I don't believe. And each module represents part of the pillars of what allows us to feel well and healthy and perform in the tasks and roles that we have, both at work and at home. And each one that we roll out, like at the moment we're working with Patagonia, amazing company, is we try to get the company also not only to do the theory component, but we do experiential learning. As an example, with the breathwork part, self-regulation, along with breathing and mental cues to help people self-regulate the nervous system, we try and get teams to do activities that really relate to that, whether that be in a really warm, safe environment of a pool where we can really tap into good breath work through doing activity, all the way through to using virtual reality and stressing parts of the brain in helping people discover self-regulation and them at their best, but theory and experiential learning. So it's a beautiful way to introduce the new way of upskilling, not just pumping people and spraying them with information, but actually going, here's the data, let's talk about it, now let's go test it. And that's what we do a fair bit in the corporate world.
So for people who want to contact you, nambaldwin.com, is that the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's, my email. And I have a website, two websites. Shupo is one, www.shupo.com.au, and then nambaldwin.com. So there's two that you can check me out. And
I would love nothing more, Nam, than our audience to reach out and connect with you and learn some of the wonderful skills.
Yeah, and we've got a great team too. So we've got, it's not just me. So we can definitely support people.
In finishing up today, I'm going to give you the flip. Is there a question in preparation for today that I haven't asked you and you'll walk away going, no, he didn't ask me that question. I did all the detailed research and storytelling and preparation for. Or the flip, is there a question you would like to ask me?
Oh, no, from what you've done and the questions, I think we dove pretty deep, very deep actually, which is great. I don't think you've missed anything out. I've got two.
You're being greedy. I said one.
I know, okay. I'll go one.
No, go two. I'm just winding you up.
Yeah, I'll go two. Who in your life have you been most grateful for? Because, fill in the blank. Let me just go there. Who in your life have you been most grateful for because or why? Fill in the blank.
One person.
If we could narrow it down.
My mother.
And why?
She has taught me a blend of care and mongrel. To have that spirit, to have that passion to achieve, and also to be connected. Mum is in her mid to late 70s. They're still renovating houses, her and Dad. And she's the matriarch, and a lot of her friends are 20 years younger. She went to CWA in the Gold Coast, and they asked her to tell a joke, and I won't say it even on this podcast. She didn't get asked back. So it's freaking hilarious. Mum at that stage was in her early 70s, told this joke, and they had a breakaway group. Some of the young ones came up and said, it's a bit stuffy here. Let's go and just have our own group. So, and it's the playfulness Mum has. So it's a beautiful blend between care, working hard, and playfulness and fun.
Wow, and knowing you, how well that served you. And sometimes it's a great question, I think, for people to just reflect back on from time to time, who they're most grateful for, and why, so that...
It's a great question.
And I could see the emotion a little bit there too, which is even better.
Yeah, I felt it, and there's
a bit of depth there, which is, it's good to tap into those things from time to time. But Andrew, just thank you for having me again, and let me share some bit of knowledge, hopefully something small that people could take away. It's been an absolute pleasure to be in your space again, as always.
I've really enjoyed today, Nam. Enjoyed getting to know you more and pulling the thread in the research, and you've been really generous. And I can see it's a constant evolution with you. It started at a young age and it's still going, and that has shown through. And I can see why you've got so much success. And as we have mentioned, being in the same space, I just love that there's people like you that are elevating the space and educating people that you actually can build this in. It's really powerful to understand human performance, to understand psychology. And what I appreciate is the storytelling. I think you've underplayed that a bit. I think you really do a lot of work behind the scene to get this crisp. That's what a lot of people don't realise, and they're going from emerging leader to the next level. Anyone listening to this and you're really wanting to nail your message, go to the next level, you've done that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's thanks to the people that I know, predominantly, because they pull it out of me. It's just the passion and hunger to have a fulfilling experience in what we call life. I think it's sometimes, and I've lost people. That's probably the why, as well as I've lost my dad. He died too young. I lost a best mate who died very suddenly. He's an ex-snowboarder and stuff. And those were the catalysts of really going, I've got to make a difference for people and help them find purity and joy in what they do, because life's short.
Thank you for making a difference today, and thank you for bringing that purity and joy.
So welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to finish with a yoga saying, Namaste.